Hey, welcome to the second episode of the Cellarcast. I don't know, it kind of rolls off the tongue. It's what I called the last episode, I guess that's what I'm calling this. So, yeah, if you hear some explosions in the background, people are setting off fireworks near me. I don't know if they're gonna pick up. I had to wait for it to die down a little bit. I was I was planning on recording like earlier today, and then I kind of procrastinated a little bit for one reason or another. What was I? Oh yeah, I was talking to someone, and then when I was done with that, I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna record the podcast, and then an explosion went off outside my window, and it triggered a fight or flight response before I realized that it was just the 4th of July. Um, People are going to be setting off fireworks, and I couldn't record because it was literally just too loud. So some still might be going off in the background, but just so you know, no, I am not in an active war zone. But speaking of an active war zone, kind of, first story thing that I care about. Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead has released its 0.F update. Yes, the .F update. They do letters. This one is F for Frank, I believe. Last one was E for Ellison. I was really excited about this when I heard about it. You're gonna listen to me crack my knuckles. I was really excited about this when I saw it. I was hyped. I love CDDA. For anyone who's not familiar, CDDA or Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, is it's a survival roguelike. So it's like Minecraft hardcore mode, if you're familiar. It's a survival game, procedurally generated, open world, and Whoa. A lot of voice cracks right now. And permadeath, as it's called. It is a super cool game. There's a caveat. There's like a little caveat. And the caveat is that it's an ASCII game. And now when I say ASCII game, it's not like an official genre, but I feel like if you're at all familiar, for some people who know what that means, they're going to hear that. They're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever played Dwarf Fortress or seen it, the term ASCII game probably strikes fear into your heart. Basically, ASCII graphics means ASCII graphics, and that's graphics which don't which really I don't actually know what the technical definition of ASCII is, but it's basically using symbols like that you from a keyboard, letters, numbers, special characters, to represent things. Basically making something visuals that are entirely made up of symbols off of a keyboard. You might have seen like ASCII art and stuff like that in like copy pastas. And the most infamous game with ASCII art is absolutely Dwarf Fortress, which is like a civilization builder, I guess you would call it, like a civilization, kind of like a really hardcore version of like SimCity. I'm not super well versed in that genre of like civilization builders or simulators, or however you want to describe it, but so maybe there's a better comparison. The main thing, I have tried to get into Dwarf Fortress before, and the main problem I've run into is that the game, if you don't play it with like a custom tile set that changes things so that it's not just ASCII graphics, if you don't play with a custom tile set, then the game is like almost unplayable. It is like impenetrable, and that is it's something that I could see people being hesitant about to get into Cataclysm. Now, having said that, I really like Cataclysm, DDA. It's it's like a type of survival game that I feel like if I had to make a survival game, I would make that. Um, you might be asking why go with ASCII graphics besides having zero budget? And yes, it's true that they have zero budget. The game is made for free. It's downloadable for free, which is great. So if you're interested, then there's no danger of wasting money or anything like that. It's also incredibly lightweight for the same reason. It's like a few megabytes. um, ASCII graphics give developers a very interesting advantage, which is that when you have a game like Rust, for instance, if you want to implement something into Rust in an update, it requires a lot of work. It requires you have to make like a 3D model, you need texturing, you need bug testing, you need sound effects, you need animations, sometimes multiple animations. You need to make sure that like physics things are properly implemented, so it's not falling through the ground. It's a lot of work, and so that's kind of like why when you see something like a game like Minecraft, they're usually able to add things to it in a more modular way, because the way the game works, it's like you have a framework of like blocks, and it makes it really easy to mod. You can like, I just make a new block and I code its behavior. And of course there's bug testing and graphical assets and all that, but the amount of work for implementing like a new block in Minecraft, and this is coming from someone with no game dev experience, so don't listen to me, don't listen to anything I say, but I imagine that it's much less than implementing something like that, an equivalent thing in Rust. ASCII games go even further in that direction of low investment, because they if you need to implement a new thing or you want to add something, you pick a symbol. you pick a symbol, and that's the graphic. Maybe a color for it. Like some things are represented by letters in game and stuff like that. And different colored letters will represent a different. That's a wolf, and this is a different thing with a W, and it's white instead. But honestly, CDDA, which is actually kind of hard to say out loud, CDDA has a lot of custom graphics, which is one of the big advantages that it has, is that it is extremely like it's actually quite easy to read. Like when I look at Dwarf Fortress, I've tried to get into Dwarf Fortress multiple times, and even like having tutorials open and looking at guides and like how to get started and all that, I always have to drop it because playing that game for more than like an hour makes my head hurt. Like I have a migraine playing that game, because it presents you with so much information in like several different ways. For one, just trying to read the terrain is like impossible, because there's like, okay, here's like a slash. What is the slash? What does the slash mean? Okay, it's by like some periods and like some tildes. What do all these mean? And you just there's such an unintuitive. It's not very visually intuitive. And then on top of that, the game has like 500 million different functions that are all accessible via a series of keyboard shortcuts. And if you aren't willing to like, it doesn't really like direct you towards the key ones or anything like that. So if you aren't willing to like sit down and learn, like, first of all, you need to like understand the systems and how to actually get like your civilization going. And then you have to learn basically at the same time all of these different hotkey processes to get from A to B. CDDA kind of subverts this by the fact that it's a lot more like readily understandable, where it's like, okay, it's a survival game. I gotta collect things. I gotta gotta walk around. I can open doors, close them, and look in containers. I gotta equip items, run from enemies or fight enemies, and everything is like pretty understandable just from like context. And there's only like 9 or 10 core functions, like opening the game has a very like all-purpose interact button as well, which is nice, just on E. So there are things that are actually a lot more intuitive about the game. So I feel like it's a little more approachable in the sense that it's like you can actually understand what's happening, as opposed to something like Dwarf Fortress where my head hurts trying to look at it and trying to understand what's happening and why they're happening. You're never really confused in CDDA unless it's confusion about how to do something, and then in which case there's a ton of guides and a very helpful in-game keyboard like shortcut guide. Very cool. The main selling point of this new update is it has pockets. It's got pockets, guys. They overhauled the container system, or not really overhauled, but they kind of changed how it worked so that it's a little more realistic. Some people don't like it. Some people dislike the more the devs. There's a little bit of controversy around the decisions that the developers have made in recent updates of moving towards more realistic mechanics and systems and such, which is totally understandable. I enjoy the game because there's just so much to do, and the nice thing about it is that there's like a million different forks of it, so you can play versions and mods that you can actually just like they just come with the game, and you can just choose to start a new world with them or not. Like there's ones that had dinosaurs and all this weird sci-fi stuff. I think that stuff is cool, and I usually turn that stuff on. I messed around, I tooled around with the new update earlier today, and I had some fun. I got killed by a dinosaur. I'm not good at the game. Like it is like a hardcore roguelike survival game, and I am not particularly good at it. I don't know how. I don't think I could count on more than one hand how many runs I've had where I survived more than one night. But it's just kind of a fun game to just kind of like explore around in, especially when you turn on a bunch of fun mod stuff, and there's so much manipulation you can do. I love the inventory system in this game, or I guess you'd call it like the equip system. I don't know. It's kind of the same thing, kind of intertwines. You can have like how many? You have like head, eyes, mouth, torso, left arm, left hand, right hand for equips, for like items. And then I don't remember if there's like both legs individually and then both feet or something like that. But you have a decent amount of I think it's like legs and then feet. You have a decent amount of pieces to equip stuff to, and every single one of those has multiple layers. So you can be wearing multiple layers of clothing that have multiple levels of storage capacity. So basically, you can be wearing like an undershirt, a shirt, a jacket with pockets. You can have a backpack, which gives you extra storage space. You can have a holster for a gun, or like a thing like a sling for a rifle over your shoulder. You can have like a little utility belt on your waist, and then you can have your pants, which themselves have pockets, and all of those add to your storage space. And you can totally become over encumbered and all that type of thing, but just the fact that I can like pick up a bunch of stuff in a survival game and not run out of inventory space is a really simple pleasure that this game allows me to have. Yeah, I would definitely recommend going to check it out. There's a great Reddit comment on the thread announcing or the news thread about the update that says, "Finally, I can't wait to something to the effect of, I can't wait to tell people never shut up about this game now that it has now that it has pockets in it." Next piece of news. This one's sad, in kind of a funny way, but only funny because I'm disconnected from it. This one comes to us from Destructoid. Knight's Dream Wheel finally revealed. And it is a slot machine. Of course. I feel really bad. I feel bad for people who like Knights. Every time I've looked at Knights, it looks like a fever dream game. Like, it looks like something that doesn't really exist. But I know some people really love it, and they just love the Yuji Naka's stuff. It was such a bummer when he retired. I don't know if he officially announced his retirement. I forget if it was official or if he was just like, I might never make a game again. Because, like, wow, you're gonna go out on Balan Wonderworld? That's a bummer. Like, you're not gonna try. You're not even gonna make like a little game. And on some level, I find it kind of annoying, because from what I understand, Yuji Naka is kind of like Keiji Inafune. There's a lot of weird parallels between Mega Man and Sonic that I notice. One of those being that the people who are purported to be the creators of the series are not exactly the creators of the series. So people love to like talk up Keiji Inafune as like the father of Mega Man, and that's like technically true, sort of. Basically, Mega Man began as a piece of sprite artwork, a pixel. The original sprite of Mega Man was what was first drawn, and that was done by Akira Kitamura, who was the lead designer and programmer for the first two Mega Man games. Extremely influential to the foundation of the series and its whole design. Inafune was an artist who took the Mega Man sprite and basically fleshed out the world of Mega Man, and then he kind of, after Kitamura left following Mega Man 2, Inafune became like the executive producer, shepherd of the series. Obviously still did a bunch of art, but there's a ton of people who have done art for Mega Man as well. So like, yeah, he's a co-creator, I think is a good way to describe Inafune. Calling him the father of Mega Man is a little disingenuous. From what I understand, Yuji Naka has even less claim to being the father of Sonic. I don't believe he came up with the concept. I don't believe he designed the character. From what I understand, Yuji Naka was a programmer on the first Sonic game. Probably the original Genesis trilogy. My Sonic lore, as in like the series, not the story lore, but my Sonic knowledge of this type of thing is a little bit limited, so I can't speak to being any kind of expert. But from what I gather, Yuji Naka is not really the creator of Sonic. He was the producer, and he was the producer for a while. I don't know when he started. Actually, we can find this out with a simple Google search. Yuji Naka. Sonic team. He programmed the original Sonic the Hedgehog game for the Mega Drive with Naoto Oshima designing the characters and Hirokazu Yasuhara creating the stages. The origins of Sonic can be traced back farther to a tech demo created by Naka, who had developed an algorithm that allowed a sprite to move smoothly on a curve, determining its position with a dot matrix. Okay, so he did contribute to the creation of a lot of the hallmarks of the series. So he was a programmer, which is, is no joke. And he ported Spy vs. Spy to the Master System. What? I'm sorry, I just saw that on his production history. Yeah, and the loops, the classic Sonic loops. So yeah, he owes to he has some he is a co-creator. Again, he's like a co-creator. Video games really are so often collaborative experiences that saying one person is the creator of something is often you have to do a little more digging. You'll find that more often than not it's a little more complicated than that, unless it's literally made by one person. Something like Undertale, or really small games like Dusk comes to mind, where it was like 3 people and mainly like one guy whose name escapes me. I'm sorry. Go play Dusk. It's an amazing retro throwback shooter. Following Sonic the Hedgehog's release, Naka moved to Sega's US branch, Sega Technical Institute, where he worked with famed American designer Mark Cerny on the follow-up in conjunction with the original team back in Japan, now known as Sonic Team. After the release of Sonic and Knuckles, Naka was moved up to the role of producer at Sega Enterprises. During his tenure in that position, he oversaw games including Nights into Dreams and Burning Rangers, Sonic Adventure, and Phantasy Star Online, Billy Hatcher. So yeah, Yuji Naka has he's got some real bangers under his belt. As of 2005, senior Sega figures including Toshihiro Nagoshi and Yu Suzuki were reporting to Naka. He was involved in all Sega game development. So if you look at his history, he does like Sonic. He's got Sonic. He's got Knights, which he actually did right after Sonic 3 and Knuckles, huh? Choo Choo Rock, like Sonic Adventure. That game is flawed, but it's a pretty good for the time. Choo Choo Rocket, Samba de Amigo, PSO. SA2, Sonic Advance 2, Sonic Pinball Party? What is Sonic Pinball Party? Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, Sonic Battle? Oh, that was a GBA game, yeah. Sonic Heroes. Did he have any involvement in Sonic 06? Shadow the Hedgehog. He is not listed as being a producer on Sonic 06. Wow. I was curious as to was his involvement in Sega or his involvement in Sonic, did that coincide with Sonic starting to go downhill? And really it was just kind of Shadow the Hedgehog. I wouldn't call Adventure 1 or 2 truly bad games myself. Shadow the Hedgehog's getting dangerously close. And then he, surprisingly, it seems like after he stopped being really involved with it, he kind of I guess that's when Sonic really went downhill. That's weird. That's weird because it's also what happened with Mega Man, in a way. Because when Inafune left, they just had no idea what to do with the series, and they just put it on ice for 7 years. So there was a new Knights leak some time ago that said it was called not Bolon. What the heck am I talking about? Knights Dream Wheel, and everyone was like, "That's a slot machine," and it's a slot machine. And there's a picture of it, and it's the most depressing thing I've ever seen. I feel so bad. I feel so bad for people who love series that just become if you're a fan of Konami, I'm so sorry, dude. Seeing all of your favorite franchises just become slot machines. I get that it's probably a different part of the company, but it's just kind of salt in the wound. That's why I really hope that there was a leak. The leak a while back. Not a leak. It was a ransomware ransomware attack would be more accurate. On Capcom, and there was some interesting announcements from that, some interesting confirmations, and probably some stuff that they already confirmed was happening, but they're confirmed release dates. But there was one thing that I picked out as a big Mega Man fan, and that was a project called... the translation is a little skewed because I believe what everyone's been referring to it as in the Sonic community is Rockman Tyson, which is the Japanese name, and Tyson could mean anything like battle or matchup or something like that. Maybe like tussle. Rockman, Mega Man tussle. That kind of rolls off the tongue, actually. I saw that, I'm like, God, I hope that's not a mobile game. I hope it's like a mainline thing. Because the thing is that 11 came out a few years ago, and I thought it was great, and it sold pretty decently from what I understand, and the collections have been selling pretty well. And so like there is vested interest. There's interest in Mega Man, more Mega Man projects, and then Rockman X Dive, which is like a mobile crossover game, came out. I tried it actually. Technically, it was weird. They didn't port it until it was not available in like North America. It didn't have a worldwide release until extremely recently, like last week, even though it's been out for like a year. When did that come out? Rockman X Dive. It might be Cross Dive. I don't. You can never tell. 2019. Yeah. So before a closed beta test was held from September. Oh, it was a beta test. That's great. That's funny because so one of the beta test locations was Taiwan. So beta test means you can download the game. Those regions got it before we did. So I literally downloaded a third-party app store to my phone so I could download like an APK and get the Taiwanese release of Dive so that I could play it in English. And it wasn't my cup of tea, which was unfortunate, but there was some neat ideas in it. I think that Mega Man needs to do way more crossover stuff. Mega Man needs to do way more crossover stuff because they have such a big legacy. And I'd really like to... I'm shocked that they have not capitalized on how many gosh darn Mega Man characters there are, and how many games there are, and how big their fan base is. Yeah, so... What the hell was I talking about? The night slot machine. Yeah, I really hope that is not a... Whatever Rockman Tyson is, it's not a disappointment. What an amazing take from me. I hope that this thing that I'm in a series that I love is not a disappointment. Anyway, next story. This is where we get into the more serious part of the news. The PlayStation... In my notes, I just wrote PlayStation sucks. There have been multiple stories recently about how difficult PlayStation is to work with. Actually, several stories about the internals of the PS. And it doesn't paint a great picture of the company. Basically, it's mainly focused around what seems to be occurring is that Sony is really hard focused on the AAA blockbuster games, Spider-Man, God of War, Last of Us, so on, and indie devs are getting completely shafted. There was a very shocking, very eye-opening. Shocking's a little strong. Very eye-opening series of tweets, actually from several people. Let's see, who is this? Matthew Wright of... Oh, that tweet is deleted. That is strange. Is this tweet... That tweet is deleted as well. Okay. I saw a picture of it. They released a pie chart basically saying that the Switch is actually really good for indie games. According to this article, which is from Kotaku, PlayStation is hard to work with, devs say. The Switch makes up a good 60% of Whitethorn Games, which let me double check what they. Whitethorn Games. It looks like they have Calico. I actually heard of that. Where did I hear about that? Calico is it's about like running a cat cafe. Yeah, okay. So they said that 60% of their profits come from Switch, which is insane. Xbox is 30%, Steam is 7%, and PlayStation is 3%. Holy cannoli. You would think that Steam, with its endless ocean of just shovel, just shovelware, that it would be so much easier to be drowned out, but shockingly the PlayStation Store, which you would imagine would be so much more highly curated, so like people, less games, higher quality, more visibility, you would imagine that they would have more than freaking 3%. Jeez. Another publisher who wished to remain anonymous told us some exact sales figures for one small indie release they named but asked us to withhold. The game sold around 20,000 copies on Xbox, compared to just 7,000 on PlayStation. Wow. However, when it came to releasing DLC, the Microsoft console saw 2,000 units shift, while, quote, oh my god, on Sony, and this is not a effing joke, until today, 7. Whew. That is a ratio. That is a wow. So of 20,000 copies on Xbox, they got 2,000 units. That's I really don't trust my math here. We're gonna pop open a calculator. How do you do this? 20,000 10%. Yeah, right? Hang on. This is so embarrassing. Yes, it's 10%. So they got 10% of their install base on Xbox also bought the DLC, which is pretty... I don't know what the general rates are. It probably differs by game and DLC, but it seems pretty good to me. Sony had... Sony saw what's... 7 divided by 7,000. 0.001%. That is ridiculous. The article goes on. The main reason given for these low numbers is not a lack of marketing, which is interesting, with some mentioning thousands spent on targeted ads that performed well for other formats. Instead, based on our conversation with a variety of developers, the numbers seem to reflect just how hard it is to find games on PlayStation if they're not heavily featured, and how incredibly difficult it is to be featured in PlayStation sales. Quoted, if your store doesn't have a place where players can find new/interesting games, an indie publisher vents to me, and you just have to literally use the search functionality to find a game, then why the F is anyone giving them 30%? Yeah, that is ridiculous, and it harkens back to, honestly, it reminds me of the PS3 store. I owned a PS3, I technically own a PS4, although it's not really mine. It's just in my house. And, I pretty much do all my I literally do all my gaming on PC, and then I do some little puzzle mobile games, so that I don't have to go a second without thinking, without my brain being occupied. So my experience with like the PlayStation stores is relatively limited, because I also usually when I bought pretty much all console games physical, because I liked it. I actually have all of my PS4. Why are all the PS4 games in my... Where are all the PS4 games in my room? I got physical copies of all my... I got the Nier Automata Day 1. Hell yeah. But from what I understand and what I remember, the search functionality is like busted. It is like... It reminded me of... basically the Windows search. You never want to be like the Windows search. The Windows search bar is I type something in, and before I finish typing in the word, the result comes up, and then I type one more letter, and then the result disappears, and I backspace to delete the letter to like, oh, is it going to come back up again? And it doesn't. It's like a mind-boggling. Ooh, that's me moving the arms of my chair up. It's like a mind-bogglingly bad search function where the more specific I get, the less it understands what I want. The PlayStation Store, I totally believe that like a marketplace an online marketplace made by a Japanese company would be bad, because a lot of, I don't know if this is the same for Sony. They seem to have people who make those decisions that are competent, or at least trying to have a competitive marketplace compared to Xbox. But I do recall a story that I've heard several times of Nintendo, bringing in, pardon me, Nintendo bringing in someone to talk about, to basically give them some, like a consultation on how to improve their online functionality, and them being in a room with a bunch of Japanese businessmen, and at one point the translator or someone brings them aside and they say, okay, you have to stop saying things like PlayStation Store and Xbox Live, because they don't know what that is. And he was like, what? And they're like, they don't know what they don't know what that is. They don't know what Steam is. And then you wonder, like, why does Nintendo do this really stupid thing where every time they release a new console, they just completely reboot their storefront and nothing carries over, and none of the libraries, and you have to buy everything again, and they like take their sweet time adding like retro games to the library, and then it's like, oh, it's because they literally don't care, and because they don't understand what it is. Give me one sec. I'm gonna peace out for a second. Okay, back. Yeah, so the Sony seems like they're falling prey to this they have a similar symptom, but to Nintendo, but it seems like the mindset's a little different. I think Nintendo are really literally just like old and they don't know what they're doing. Sony with their gaming division looks like, I don't know if this is true. Obviously, I'm on the outside, but it reminds me of their film division. Actually, there's like a episode. There's like a Red Letter Media video from way back, like a few years ago, on some. Was it like Pixels? I don't remember. It was Pixels or maybe like something like that. Like I think Pixels was done by. I was gonna say published by, produced by Sony. But basically, Jay, I believe, made the point that Sony have been like really, in terms of entertainment, have been really dropping the ball in their movies. And just trying to pump out like short cash grabs or big blockbusters, and it not panning out. And he said that like the only thing that they're really succeeding in is their video game division. This was during the PS4's life cycle. I want to say kind of early into it or midways into it, because they had such a big head start. And it seems like from what these developers say, these indie developers, one of the things on top of like just the store, because the store has such bad visibility, the games that are visible are ones that they promote, and that's like all of their big blockbuster AAA titles. I'm sure there's some variety, but there's a heavy skew towards the bigger and even like the mid budget. You could the double A, I guess you'd call it, games. And it's really it's burning a bit of a bridge with. I can foresee it burning a bit of a bridge. It seems like they're hitting a breaking point now. At least some more indie developers are, as these series of now deleted tweets suggests, where they don't want to deal with Sony anymore, and they don't feel like giving them 30% of their revenue for such little revenue in the first place, especially with how much you have to invest in passing the check. The console check. From what I understand, from what I've heard, Sony's compliance checks are the most thorough and laborious in the entire industry. It's actually called, in Japan, it's called the Sony check because it's so, developers dread it so badly. And it's a real shame because Sony has had the PlayStation brand has had a very long history of promoting a very diverse series of games, and it kind of sucks because Xbox seems to be doing pretty well, like in terms of consoles, for indie. Whoa! I just knocked my headphones out. In terms of consoles for indie developers, the Switch seems to be leading actually. And then Microsoft is doing very well. I'm surprised that Nintendo, because I don't know, Nintendo's always had they've historically been pretty weak in terms of third-party support, but I guess they're starting to build it up again, which is neat. Xbox has always been a weird smattering where they have they got the Master Chiefs and they got a couple. They got the Gears of Wars, and a lot of their library, it's not very diverse, but if you like a certain kind of game, you go for it. And it kind of sucks because if Sony is kind of blowing it right now, if you play Japanese games, it's like, what else are you gonna go to? There's so many PlayStation exclusive Japanese games. Tons of fighting games are exclusive to the platform. God, you don't want to play with Switch. You want to play on the Switch's online service? That sucks. It always sucks to see a console manufacturer. This is really what happens is this is the pendulum swinging. So when companies are not doing that great, they're the underdogs, and they have to make these decisions to get developers on board to make things better for their consumer base. But when they're on top, they're like, we can do anything. And Sony has already been through this song and dance one time with the PlayStation 3. I said as much in my video that they managed to turn it around. But they might honestly be going back in the same direction, and I would be disappointed that they didn't learn their lesson, but not entirely surprised. Because Microsoft kind of did the same thing. They traded off. They trade off who's in the clown seat, as one I've seen before. I've seen it phrased before. And because the 360, I don't think the Xbox brand has ever actually turned a profit, but they had a dominant market share in the third generation. Sorry, not the third generation. What the hell am I? The seventh generation. At least for most of it. I think the PS3 eventually overtook them, but they were riding high for a long. They had a lot of momentum, and then they just tripped over a log. Oh, they just tripped over a rock and fell flat on their face with the Xbox One's launch. The X-Bone. And they lost so much of that momentum, and they have been really struggling to get it back. And so when people praise things like the Xbox Game Pass, which is actually, I don't use it, because I don't own an Xbox, but just looking at the value it offers you is like ridiculous. It's crazy. It's such a good deal. You get so many great games just for free, or for a very low price, a criminally low price. And PlayStation, the PS Now service, which is, the competitor, by comparison, like, it's fine, but it doesn't really hold up to Game Pass, and they can afford to do that because the PlayStation brand is on top right now. But that might also be, it's like the decision, the complacency. The complacency is what will eventually cause the decisions that cause the pendulum to swing back the other way, where they are eating it. And yeah, I can tell you for sure, if Xbox gets on top this generation, it's going to be, you're going to see a flip. You're going to see history repeat itself, but it's on the flip side. PlayStation is going to be, they're going to be the garbos. They're going to be like, what are they doing? PlayStation's really gone downhill. They lost it. And then Microsoft's, if they're on top, everyone's gonna love them. And then the next generation, it's gonna go the other way. And then Sony's gonna start being a little more friendly to indie devs. They're gonna start being more better to their consumers, and just in terms of like offering a better product and all that, probably more affordable. And then Xbox is gonna be, they're gonna gunk up. And yeah, it's the way it goes. And speaking of the way it goes, the other not fun article: video games are a labor disaster. Eek. From the New Republic. Now, this was interesting to me because the New Republic is not a gaming magazine. They are just a general. Just a general. I don't know how they would describe themselves. They're just a general news or editorial magazine, that type of thing. So video games are a labor disaster. Subheader. Yeah. Why do game studios keep imploding? This is mainly on the new Jason Schreier book, Press Reset, which is about that time that Curt Schilling, the baseball player, tried to create a video game company, had no idea what he was doing, and then it completely failed and put a ton of people out of work and destabilized their lives. So, actually, it's one of the stories. It's actually about several of these kinds of stories. That's why it's called Press Reset. Because there's a lot of things I really like about the games industry. I like how crazy it is, and how funny it is, and like, I love that it kind of works like no other industry, in the sense of like, have you ever seen like the head of AMC just come out and just talk smack on Cinemark? No, but like that kind of thing happens in gaming like all the time. It's mostly near like a console release cycle. But like that kind of thing of like, this industry's crazy, and you just come up with these like insane stories. internal stories that just do not happen in any other industry. The flip side, the dark side of that, is that there's a lot of parts of that that are really harmful and destructive to people's lives. And worker abuse is a serious problem in the games industry. It's really unfortunate. And I would never go to bat for crunch. I understand that sometimes things like crunch are somewhat, to some degree, in some cases, it's unavoidable. But God, if you have to crunch, I feel for people, and I hope that it's mercifully short, like a mercifully short period of time. Like a week or two, maybe. You should not have to. Crunch is a failure of management, really. If your game is properly managed and planned, and you have a clear vision, you should not be crunching. I'm getting a little off topic, but it's kind of one of the topics of this article. It's sort of incidental. It works into the main point, but really, the main kind of thesis is that the games industry they use the word dysfunction, dysfunctional. Basically, how often do you see studios form and then go out of business? It's incredibly volatile, and it's one of the reasons that I don't work in the games industry, because like that stuff's scary, of not knowing if I'm going to have a job next week at any given point. I think thankfully people have become more sympathetic to developers who are crunching, but also a bunch of people just don't care, and they think that it's fine, and as long as they get their video game, they're okay with people literally having heart attacks at their desks to make it, which is really unfortunate. It's one of the reasons why I always feel I don't play a ton of new games, and a lot of the games that I do end up playing are smaller games, ones where worker abuse is not a known thing of them, of their development. When you're looking at something like this and you're like, why is the games industry in particular so dysfunctional, is a good word for it. Why is it so messy and chaotic and dysfunctional? And I've always thought it was weird that there was no union effort, and there are and there have been, and they actually they point out one in this article called Game Workers Unite, which I have not actually heard of. And then a very interesting point about video game workers unions, which I would never have been able to make, which is basically that one of the reasons that Hollywood doesn't suffer from this type of problem is that they're incredibly unionized, and workers' rights, the Screen Actors Guild, all of that, the theater one, they are all heavily unionized, and they ensure that that type of thing does not happen, and that it is extremely, if you ever do that you are going to suffer some serious consequences. One of the reasons those are allowed to exist is that historically those came up around a time where unionization was like kind of a new thing, where there was kind of like a new demand for workers' rights. So they point out the President Roosevelt's National Industrial Recovery Act of 1933, with its declaration of labor's right to representatives of its own choosing. That it was basically like a cultural thing, and that unionization is not... those initial unions formed at a time when they were really not workers' rights were a problem because they didn't exist and people wanted them. And so they were able to lay their roots early and strong and sustain. And now I don't know. I feel like it's not as big of a topic in culture and in like across industries. It's a very specific problem to the games industry. And a lot of people, it's really sad, a lot of people really just don't care. It's really a shame. They don't care at all about the well-being of the people who literally just slave away and make these things that they enjoy, that are meaningful. I hope that at some point, I'm just sitting here in my room and I don't have any control over this as far as I know. Maybe there's a charity or something. I have no clue. As far as I know, I don't have any way of directly supporting something like this. I wish I could, but it's just like, I don't know. Is it just baked in? Do you just accept that? Do you just accept that's the way the industry is? I don't think you should. But like, what am I supposed to do? It's a shame. Yeah, it's a real shame. So which is why it's always nice to hear a game that is developed without any crunch at all. It's really refreshing. Like, what was it? Crash 4. Yeah, a real full-on, I don't know if you'd describe Crash 4 as a AAA title, but a decently high-profile game developed with reportedly zero crunch. That type of thing is great, and I would support more of that. And I'm sorry that the developers are going into the Call of Duty mines. Anyway, next topic. Okay. There was an interview. We're going back to things incredibly focused around my interests. There was an interview with, Arc System Works by, let me see if I can find the... Who did the... Oh, is it a Tumblr account? That's crazy. Comunidad Arc System Works? Is it official? I never noticed that. I assumed that it was like a repost of a... yeah, it looks like a Spanish-speaking Arc System Works account on Tumblr. I guess they got an interview with someone. It is not clear who it is. But it is official. It is official. And there were some interesting statements in it, namely the one that I'm really curious about. You know, they talk about like the difficulty of like some of the netcode implementation, the results from the launch, the DLC, some of their other games like Dragon Ball FighterZ and that Dungeon Fighter game that they've got coming up. They ask a great question. Will we see more games, more past games, getting the GGXX ACPR treatment? So, if anyone is not aware of the context of this question, Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R, horrible name, amazing game, basically had garbage online for the longest time. And then a group of fans were developing a patch to basically, if you were playing the game through an emulator, you would be able to play with very well functioning online, which was super cool. And then Arc System Works contacted them, and then instead of DMCAing them or cease and desisting them like a certain company, They were like, hey, we see what you're doing here. Would you mind implementing that into the full release, like the original release of the game? Or the official release of the game? And they were like, oh, yeah. So if you go on Steam, I don't know if the game is even available on like online, on like console storefronts, but if you go on Steam, the current version of Guilty Gear XX Accent Core Plus R has immaculate rollback netcode. So as long as you're playing on a wired Ethernet connection, it plays great. It is so good. You can literally play people from the US to Japan with obviously some hitches, but it's like somewhat playable. It is decently playable depending on connection, which is more so than originally, where it would be literally impossible. It's really crazy. It's amazing. It's a miracle. And I believe that it's my suspicion that that was a testing ground for Guilty Gear Strive's netcode, which had a very similar kind of architecture. Not the same implementation, not the same team, but a similar approach, without getting into the nitty-gritty of fighting game online netcode, infrastructure, technical stuff. I think it was a testing ground for, like, okay, let's put it in one of our older games. Let's see how it works out. Let's see what the reaction is. And it was immensely positive. And they were like, okay, cool. We'll do that for Strive. And they did. And it's great. And Strive's Online is great as well. So now you open up the floodgates, basically, of people being like, whoa. Because here's the thing, is that the form of netcode that was patched into the game, it's called rollback netcode. It is great. However, it's very CPU intensive because it's basically storing a save state on every frame. And then if there's a desync between the two players, once the connections catch back up and you resynchronize, the game will, if something has changed in that space, which could literally be the span of a couple frames, it'll roll back. So it's called rollback. And it'll basically load where your opponent should. It'll basically make corrections. It'll make corrections once the lag spike is over, and it will correct for each player where they should be, or where the opponent should be. You don't get affected on your end, but your opponent will. So in like really bad cases, it'll lead to like the opponent just teleporting around, basically, because the game is just constantly correcting, like, oh wait, they're actually over there, oh they were actually over here, oh they actually jumped here. But in most cases with a stable connection over a wired like Ethernet connection, it's great. But it is CPU intensive. However, for a game like Guilty Gear XX, which the original version was released in like 2006, you can kind of just like brute force it. You can kind of just like slap rollback on top of it, and of course it's not as simple as that, but it's a lot easier and less hardware intensive than a more recent game with like 3D models and a lot more GPU power and all that. There is a greater extent to which you can just brute force the rollback onto it, and so now it's like, oh, can you do this with other games? And it has been done with other games, namely like anything that you can go play on Fightcade, like Third Strike or Vampire Savior or Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and all that stuff. Basically a bunch of like the classic 2D style, 2D visuals specifically, not using 3D models, or not using like 3D models for the characters. You can kind of slap rollback on that a lot easier. You can retrofit it in, would be a better term. You can retrofit it rollback into games with 2D visuals, just like sprite-based visuals, a lot easier than you can 3D ones. So now it's like, will we see more past games getting the same treatment? And they say, definitively, yes. We cannot say when it would happen for sure, but we are actively thinking about it. Now, I don't know if this is just a translation thing. I don't know if this is translated from, because this is a Spanish-speaking account, I don't know if it is... Let me check the original post one more time. So the original post is all in English. The account is Spanish-speaking. And I'm assuming that they're talking... They don't say who the interview is with. They just say with Arc System Works. Yeah, there's no confirmation of who is actually being, which member of the team is being interviewed. If it's from the Arc System Works' English or what the hell am I trying to say? The Japanese branch or the American, the U.S. offices. So I don't know if it's being translated from like Japanese to Spanish to English. If the questions, I don't know how there could be a layer of lost in translation here. But it's a pretty definitive yes, and that is really cool. The note that I wrote is just all caps, BBCF ROLLBACK, because if there's any game of theirs that I'm really interested in actually getting rollback and getting functional online, it would be BlazBlue Central Fiction, which is a game. BlazBlue is really cool to me, but a lot of things are really cool. There's characters that I've tried out that I think would fit my playstyle and what I like. However, you just can't play the game online. It's so hard. It's like a ghost town, and I really don't feel like joining a Discord to match up with people. It's just like not. I just want to boot up the game. I want to hop in, and even if like plus R, for instance, if ACPR, if that game's player base goes down by 50%, it doesn't matter because you can play anyone anywhere. So as long as there's people online, you can basically play them, which is amazing. You know, they have a decent wired connection. The great thing about rollback is because there's no servers except for like rankings, basically just keeping rankings and matchmaking. If the servers go down, you can just do player matches with people because it's all peer-to-peer. And so like what it really gives is it gives a game longevity because you can just always play it. What's so awesome is that now you can play plus R anytime, and it's a wonderful thing for the community. You can play things, you know, in a pandemic. You can hold a tournament in a pandemic. I've participated in tournaments for this game, and I think that a lot of people end up like abandoning a game once another one comes out, a fighting game, I mean. And like Central Fiction came out a few years ago, and you know, now there's like Dragon Ball Fighters and there's Strive, and like who's playing BlazBlue? BlazBlue got rebooted as a freaking mobile gacha game. And so like just giving BBCF rollback would be such a nice thing to the community. And it would make me actually want to invest time in the game. There's games where I'm like, this game is cool, but it doesn't have good online, and so I don't see the point in continuing to play it. Just honestly. Because I'm not going to get the most out of it. Because I just can't play people online, and that's where you get the most out of fighting games. For me, at least. For a lot of people as well. We're going to move on to some thoughts on Terraria. Yeah, so I bought Terraria on a sale for like $5 a little while ago, and I hadn't played it until like this weekend, so I put some hours into it. And Terraria is a really interesting game to me because it was in like the first wave of what people called like Minecraft clones that actually got traction. Because Terraria is so obviously takes a lot from Minecraft. I don't know what the development history is. It had to have been inspired by it, but it has such a different spin on it, in so many more ways than just the fact that it's two-dimensional. Like, the entire approach to content and progression in Terraria is just completely different from Minecraft. Minecraft, I think, kind of suffers from... I feel like after Notch left the project, I think the game kind of suffered a bit from a lack of focus on, like, how, like, what is the... It has such a good, strong start that can go for so long. And you can't just enjoy Minecraft as it was, like, you know, in the betas and the early versions of the fall release and all that. But in terms of, like, actually updating the game, they were kind of at this, like, crossroads where I believe the release of the game, I don't remember when the Ender Dragon was added, but the Ender Dragon is, like, really important because what the Ender Dragon did is it gave Minecraft a goal. It gave it, like, a solid goal. Like, you can say, okay, when you beat Minecraft when you kill the Ender Dragon. And that massively shifts the focus over from many of the other things that Minecraft is also about. Where Minecraft is just kind of a sandbox, and you just kind of, like, survive, and you mine and you craft and you build stuff. The shift from, like, exploration, building, crafting, fighting to, I think, oh god, I have no idea who made this video. They called it conquering gameplay, which I think is a really good term for it. Because when you go fight the Ender Dragon, it's not really about exploring stuff. It's about you're there to conquer this challenge. You're there to conquer this area, this, like, unique dimension area. And you're there to beat the Ender Dragon and see the end credits. And I think the game is kind of like... It's got this weird sort of identity thing going on that isn't, like, completely compromising. I still enjoy Minecraft quite a bit. But it's like, okay, what do you... Some things don't feel like fully... Like, they went all... Some things don't feel like they went all in. Like, it feels like this was not the plan from the beginning. Terraria feels, at least from what I remembered and from when I played it in the past and what I'm experiencing now, it feels like Terraria was a lot more holistically designed, where they had an idea of what they wanted the game to be like from the beginning, and they worked towards that until they hit the literal, like, final update. Which it might still be getting bug fixes. Stuff like that. Actually not. They did put out, like... Oh. Terraria summer updates. Wait. No, I don't know. It looks like the... Yeah, it looks like they're mostly just doing stuff like bug fixes and things like that. They might be adding content. But they basically put out that it was, like, the final version, the complete version of the game. Somewhat recently, I want to say 6 months ago. I might be totally off on that. And so they had, like, a definite vision, and part of that vision was, like, a really strong idea of, like, okay, so Terraria is about starting from nothing, and then building up, gaining equipment, going and fighting monsters so that you can conquer, to use that term, you can conquer these bosses. Terraria has, like, all these different bosses. There's, like, really clear, specific goals in Terraria that all work together with each other. What I find really interesting is how both games do torches. This seems really small, but it's really fascinating to me. So in Minecraft, torches are made with a stick and a piece of coal. And coal is something that you mine. Well, hang on. So I'm getting ahead of myself. In Terraria, torches are made with a stick And just a basic torch. There's several different types of torches in Terraria, but the basic torch is made with a stick or wood, a wood piece, and gel. And gel is a drop from slimes, which are a basic mob on the overworld. I find that difference super interesting because I think it's really emblematic of the different approaches that both games take to kind of just like their identities. Minecraft is like the main focus is on survival. The foundations of the game are in survival. So like you think about it, you're like, okay, why is combat in Minecraft? Combat is in Minecraft because there has to be a threat to get you to survive. There needs to be monsters who can harm you. If you think about it logically, I'm organizing my thoughts really, really quickly here. If you think about it like in a logical progression, it's like, okay, you're in this world. Notch wants you to survive and build up stuff. That's the idea. That's the fantasy. What is going to get you to survive? Okay, at nighttime, this is going to be your first little push. At nighttime, monsters spawn. Okay, so if monsters spawn, they need to be able to hurt you. So there's a threat now that you can die. And so if you don't want to die and you want to progress, you have to harvest materials and build a house and craft things. You have to do the main parts of the game. The combat is like, it's part of the puzzle. It's not the goal. It's part of the puzzle. Minecraft does not start you out and says, here's how the combat works. It says it starts you out and, well, to begin with, it doesn't tell you anything. But the first thing you do in Minecraft is you go harvest materials so that you can build a house to avoid combat. And then once you're powerful enough, as in like you have a wooden sword or something, then you can go fight mobs if they threaten you. But all of that is done by mining and chopping down trees and stuff like that. Torches create light, which prevents mobs from spawning. Torches are created by harvesting wood to make sticks, and then using those materials to make a pickaxe to mine coal so that you can build torches to keep mobs from spawning, to protect yourself. It's like a response to the combat, basically. You're trying to avoid it. In Terraria, if you want to get the basic... Well, it's interesting because it starts you off with tools, with a basic set of tools. And there's no item durability in Terraria. So it's like you use these, and these are tools. And these are things that you use to get to a point. They're means to an end. Which is kind of how Minecraft works as well. But Terraria has this really different spin on it where it's like, you can start mining immediately, but you're going to encounter monsters immediately as well. If you want to make torches in order to build a beginning house, you need to kill slimes. It starts you off with a sword and says, go kill slimes. It starts you off with like 3 basic tools: pickaxe, sword, and axe. And it says, like, these are the main 3 things of the game. You're going to kill things, you're going to mine stuff, and you're going to chop down trees. And that is like a through line throughout the entire design process. You kill slimes to get gels to make torches so that mobs don't spawn near your house. And torches also... There's a really interesting... I really like the whole NPC housing system where when you build a house, if it meets certain conditions, a unique type of NPC will actually like spawn into your world and move in. And one of the prerequisites for an NPC moving into a room is that there is a light source. So like these things just kind of like stack on top of each other and they move very logically and intertwine. So like the combat's actually necessary to the survival aspect. Minecraft feels kind of like it was going in one way, and then they were like, oh, but I want you to be able to do, like, go kill a boss. Terraria feels like it was designed from the outset as a game that would have bosses in it. whereas Minecraft doesn't really. Because the Ender Dragon is like just there. Like you go into the end and it's just there. It's like, why is this here? What does it do? It doesn't have like, it barely has like a presence. It's just a big dragon. I really don't think it's a great boss. The Wither also, which is the only other boss of Minecraft. Notice how they've only ever added 2 bosses. I think that's funny because the bosses are not interesting. They don't have interesting behaviors or means of attack. They've tried to update the Ender Dragon so that it's a little more of an interesting fight, but like for literally years, the Ender Dragon was the most basic, uninteresting fight, and you shoot the crystals so that it doesn't heal. And that was it. The Wither is like, you don't get hit by its barrage of explosive attacks, and then you hit it until it dies. I don't know. Terraria it feels like a lot more confident, I guess. I guess that's how I would describe its design decisions. It's like, this is what you're gonna do. There's like, I played the mobile version of Terraria ages ago when I was like a little kid, and what I find interesting is that there's so many bosses in the game that are tied to the exploration. So like, there's like a fortress that spawns, and you try to go into the fortress, and then this like skeleton jumps out, this like a skull head appears and kills you instantly. You're like, what the fuck? What? And then you find out they're like, oh, I actually don't remember how it works. But there's like a thing you need so that that doesn't happen, so that you can actually go down and explore. But the goal is that you're going to go fight this big skeleton thing. And so it's like built in. There's like this built-in mystery of like, oh, how do I get in there? It's creating this like enemy. Like, oh, I want to fight the skeleton. You like go down into the dungeons and you find like the underground jungle, and there's like a boss that's like a big bee, and you can fight the bee, and when you kill it, it'll drop like a really cool unique weapon, or like a slingshot, or not a slingshot, a grappling hook. There's all these things, like the bosses drop interesting things that actually like further your combat ability, or your crafting, or your maneuvering, or your ability to mine stuff, to harvest materials. I don't even remember what the Wither drops in Minecraft, and I'm pretty sure the Ender Dragon just spawns a completely cosmetic, like, little egg item. You go down into hell, and there's like the Wall of Flesh, which is like this crazy boss that has, you're like running from one end of the underground to the other, trying to like kill this giant crazy boss. And it's like, okay, yeah, they had like an idea. Every single one of these is like building towards, you're fleshing out the world. You're exploring the world, you're fleshing it out, and you're combating it. And the combating is also aiding in your exploration. And it's like it's a feedback loop. They serve each other. The different systems of the different parts of the game serve each other. And that's kind of what you want in a game. I still enjoy a game like Minecraft, but I think that's why I'm finding Terraria pretty compelling right now. And that might be because it's more new to me, and there's a lot of things that have been changed since the last time I played it that I think are neat. I think that like the corruption, there's like 2 different like things. There's all these cool little like unique biomes. Exploring the world feels cool because it's a lot more fantasy-ish, and there's a lot more stuff to like explore and find, and different like weird monsters. It's kind of like that's part of the appeal, is you're fighting stuff. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself at this point, so I'll wrap it up a little bit. I'm closing out like an hour and a half. I should probably have something. I have something interesting, I think, coming up fairly soon. So if you've made it to the end of the podcast, then look forward to that. I can't say exactly what it is because I'm still working out the details. But it is a collaborative work. Ooh, very cool. I'm approaching 400 subscribers, which is really, really cool. I'm really glad that the channel's been getting a lot of support recently. People leave a lot of nice messages. I might do a segment, like, if people leave comments on this. If anyone's curious, we could do like a fan mail segment. That would be fun. I don't get enough comments that I would need to like open a separate email for submissions. I can just look at the comments, honestly, at this point. If you have any like questions or topics you think would be interesting to talk about or bring up, let me know in the comments. This has been the Cellarcast. I have no outro.